Good evening, everyone. If we can get everyone seated, we can get the meeting started, please. Thank you. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Town of Arlington Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for December 4th, 2017. Please note that everyone is here and accounted for except for Mr. Harry McKee. He had a previous commitment. So if everyone would please stand for the opening prayer by Alderman Jeff McKee and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Lord, again, thank you for the opportunity to come and serve our town. And Lord, along with these gentlemen and lady up here, Lord, just pray for you to give us wisdom. And Lord, just give us guidance on what we need to do the best thing we can for our town. Lord, I pray for our president. Lord, I pray for our governor and all the elected officials that are leading our country and state. Lord, I pray for our firemen and police officers, deputies, Lord, that are protecting us. Lord, just keep them safe, especially during this time of the year. Keep everybody safe during the Christmas season so they can spend time with their families. Lord, I just let us have a great meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Mr. Hill, you haven't been here in a while. Will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be happy to. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the November 6, 2017 meeting?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Mr. Brooks. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item passes. Next up is grievances and comments from citizens. This is a chance where we allow anyone to come forward and speak on any particular topic they choose. We'll give you up to 3 minutes. We do, just please note that it's not necessarily a Q&A, so we may not be able to answer your questions, but hopefully if it's something on the agenda tonight, it will be answered at that time. Staff will take notes if it's anything that's not covered, but we just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So again, we'll just do this since it's not a big crowd. We'll just, by a show of hands, if anybody wants to come up and speak, just state your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Mr. Moultrie? Okay.
Hey, John Moultrie, 11939 Henning Oaks Lane. If I have so many grievances, I need more than 3 minutes. What do I do?
You better hurry up.
As most of you know, our partners, the Winsteads, and me and Ryan Tucker, we are in the process of developing new site in the Depot Square area, and really excited about that. Lots of questions coming from many people around town. Hey, what's going on? What's the holdup? We did get word today. We have final approval on some financing. We're about ready to order an appraisal, so it's in the works. It's just slow. The reason I came forward tonight is I know there's items on your agenda to discuss regarding the future development and the future of Depot Square and where the town is going. So I just wanted to kind of come forward and say, listen, want to encourage you to move forward with what you had drawn up, what your intentions were several years ago. People like myself and other citizens have invested in that area. It's going to be a great thing for our town. Great thing for the next 20, 30, 50 years for Arlington, and I just wanted to voice, please move forward with what you had planned to do so, because those of us in the community that were kind of banking on that have really stepped out there to hopefully benefit both the town and us. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll save all the other grievances for another day.
We appreciate that. Before we get the next person up, I did want to just turn it over to Ms. Owens for a minute. So everyone is aware, we do have a new addition to some equipment in the back, and I'd just like her to explain what's going on with that. Ms. Owens?
Yes, so you'll remember a few months ago, you guys approved to purchase a camera system through a lease agreement. It has been completely installed. This is our first trial run. You are being recorded, but just so everyone knows, as a reminder, please make sure you turn your microphone on and turn it off when you're done speaking. They have been messing with our electrical, so we just want to make sure everything's working. We will be posting this on the website. For the first few months, it's going to be the next day that it'll be posted. just so we can get all the kinks worked out and make sure everything's working properly. And then we'll eventually move to a live broadcast on our website.
And are we doing on the school news channel too? Did we discuss that, or was that just something that we discussed a while back? I can't remember.
We discussed it briefly in the board meeting, but we have not worked out an agreement with the
Okay.
schools yet.
All right, any questions on the camera? We are now live, I guess, so. All right, thank you, Ms. Owens. All right, sorry for that interruption. Next up, please. Yes, Mr. Wilson.
I appreciate you making that comment, so I can now come up here and speak knowing my better side is being viewed here. Bob Wilson from 6065 Ewing Boulevard, here in Arlington, making comments in support also for the upcoming resolution for you folks to invest in the community. I'm an 11-year resident here in Arlington, and I own 5 businesses that call Arlington their home. That include headquarters for our 7 locations around the world, all throughout USA and Asia. And my business partner and I are vested in the Arlington community, and contingent upon final approval, hopefully coming soon, are also investing about $5 million to develop the parcel that used to be called the Community Garden prior to its recent relocation. All of that is into tax-generating retail space and mixed-use space. We also intend to invest an additional $2 million in adjacent properties that will also generate taxable revenue. I believe these investments, along with those that have already been referenced by other business owners that are here in the Depot Square, will have a significant impact on making Depot Square a destination location, not only for Arlington residents, but for people from cities and other counties as well. I feel strongly that the investment that the city is talking about making on the infrastructure is of paramount importance to ensure that we provide an attractive, safe, and vibrant downtown. The proposed investments seem consistent with the city master plan for Depot Square, as is our development, and that has received a great deal of support from the community, so we're hoping that that continues to be the case. And I believe it's critical to building a downtown that we will all be really pleased with. I also believe it's appropriate for the town to complete this investment, given the investments that other people and businesses are making in Depot Square during 2018 and throughout 2019. So I just wanted to also lend my support and say those words in support of the investment that the town will be speaking of later on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on any particular topic? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to communications from the mayor. First up, Sheriff's Department report, please.
We did not receive our report for Arlington for this month yet. As soon as we do, we will forward it to y'all, but the unit that actually generates all the stats and pulls all that data, they have not sent that to us as of yet. As soon as we get it, we will send it to you. The one thing I can speak on is the armed robbery that was right down here at 11933 Highway 70, that little gas station. Detectives are working on that. Two subjects went in, robbed the business of $4,000. Also want to let people know, around this time of year with it being Christmas, make sure you lock your doors. Make sure you keep your garages closed, and make sure those packages that come in, you may not want to put them out with the trash until the day of, and then disguise them if you can, so people don't know what you've actually got in your residence. Just a little, just a little something to think about. But as soon as we get that report, we'll send it to y'all.
Okay, we appreciate it. We thank you for being here. Does anybody have a question for? Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, Chief Harville, Arlington Fire Department.
Good evening. The total fire responses for the month of November was 89. We had 35 of those being EMS responses. Fire responses was 54. We gave mutual aid to Shelby County 20 times and received it 15. Total amount of calls on or south of Interstate I-40 was 21. There were 7 instances where Arlington Fire Companies were on other calls, and Shelby County responded in here with us on those other calls. We conducted 17 building inspections. We inspected 1 smoke detector and hung 1 smoke detector. We have 4 events of significance. Chief McMillan collected first place fire safety posters from all 4 Arlington community schools and submitted those to the State Fire Marshal's office. They're doing a monthly fire poster contest, excuse me, entitled Seconds Count, No Two Ways Out. Arlington student actually won one, I believe it was last year, through that poster contest. Fire personnel also participated in extrication training. For those that came by Airline Road in Memphis, Arlington, may have noticed the cars up on the side. We have automobile stabilization devices, and we trained our personnel on those on that corner. We also had multiple, being the month for Veterans Day, activities throughout the month through the various schools and other locations for Veterans Day. And 2 calls of notice. We had a fatality accident that required extensive extrication, and we had that small explosion you guys probably heard last week right here in one of our local businesses. And also, upon your direction earlier today, followed up with them, talked with the plant personnel, and they foresee being back open and running by the end of this week.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief?
I have a question.
Mr. Biggs?
The 7 calls that's the unavailable, is that how we term that, right? Is that, I've heard it termed unavailable in the past.
All that means, Alderman, is that we were on 7 calls, 7 different times.
Right.
We weren't available for that call here, but the citizens of the town were still received aid. Shelby County comes in and renders aid when we're busy.
Just, the only thing that kind of stood out to me when I saw that number is that's larger than I've seen it before.
It was a busy month.
Do what?
It was a busy month
Yeah.
for calls.
I think the most I'd seen before this is 5.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions for Chief Harbaugh, or does that answer everything you have? Any other questions for Chief? I just want to say good job. I mean,
Thanks, sir.
I was at work Friday, or not Friday, when the explosion happened, and of course, everybody starts wondering what I'm going to do. I said, I'm not doing anything. I've got a chief in place that's going to do it.
My hat's off, and I told them on the scene there, and again today, to the plant personnel. They did a phenomenal job realizing the hazard that was there, evacuated everyone safely. They said they were out probably 5 to 7 minutes before the explosion occurred. Had there been personnel right there at the point of impact, we'd probably had some fatalities. So hats off to those guys.
Appreciate you. You just relay that to the guys, please. I know, and girls, that we appreciate the work. 'Cause I know, an extrication with a fatality and an explosion like that, they're out of the norm, and sometimes it can weigh heavy on us, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, committee appointments. I don't know if we just have the one committee, which is Health and Safety. If you recall, last month, we were still trying to get a little more direction on that one, and so I think they since had a meeting with Ms. Pardue, and I'll let her announce who's on the committee, and as we move forward. Ms. Pardue?
Yes, 2 weeks ago, we had our first Health and Safety Committee meeting, and from what I understand, the first in quite a while. And so we are very excited to begin this new program, well, not new program, but new vision for this particular committee. We'll have residents Roger Matheson, Steve Beerbrot, and Larry Myers that will be reappointed to this committee. And then we will be appointing Dana Viox and Jim Volker to join us. So if you know these individuals, you know that this is a rock star committee. We've got a great group of citizens that have volunteered their time to step up and take on the task that the town has put before us. And so we look forward to having regular meetings going forward and addressing some of these issues that our town is facing right now.
Thank you, Ms. Pardue. So just wanted everyone to be aware of who those committee appointments were, so thank you. My messages will be brief. Just have a few notes. I know Ms. Howe's here from the chamber. We have the chamber lunch next Wednesday. You are the guest speaker, or the honorary speaker, however you want to. So if anyone can attend next Wednesday, that is at the Church of Christ over on Polk Street. We've mentioned the video of the meetings now. We also, I'll speak on the chamber, we also have the ACS ribbon cutting for their new administration building. That's next Thursday. So just want to mention those few things. Mrs. Owens, we have our next month's meeting, since January 1st falls on a Monday, correct? So it will be January 2nd. Just want everybody to make note of that. So January 2nd. Won't interfere with any of the bowl games. So some of us are pretty happy on that. Do want to just applaud town staff and, Kevin and Mr. Perkins and town staff here, but it was, we were supposed to have Christmas on the Square a couple weeks ago, made an excellent call on canceling that. I was quite, I think a lot of us were saying, oh, it doesn't look like it's going to be that bad, but right about 1:30, 2 o'clock, the bottom fell out. And it was a great call by staff, and, I know everybody sometimes questions it, you never can predict the weather, but I don't think we could have been more perfect on that decision. And so to reschedule that for this coming up Saturday, it took some work and some effort, but so we're looking forward to a good Christmas on the Square. It looks like one you're going to be able to bundle up for. It's going to be pretty chilly this week, but it's going to be nice. It's one of our signature events, and we're very excited about it. But also on the parade, last year we moved it over to Airline for the first time, and there were some questions on that, and there were some, it seems different. And last year we had weather issues on that also, where it was raining and the turnout was kind of low. This year, completely different. The weather was perfect. And if you were trying to get in the high school just to park, and you saw Wonder Woman right here, Mrs. Durant, dressed up as Wonder Woman.
You weren't supposed to say that.
And Mr. Perkins sitting there trying to direct traffic and get everybody in there, and staff was all over the place, and every bit of staff that we have, and the traffic, it was like the Liberty Bowl game or something, and it was bad traffic, which is a good thing to have, but it was one of those things that I'm sure moving forward we'll have to figure out how to address the traffic if we get that kind of weather and turnout again. So it was great. I haven't heard one complaint about it. And so I just want to, again, thank you all for all your work. And I know sometimes you all don't get to enjoy the things that you actually are putting together, but know that everybody else is enjoying it. So we appreciate you.
Can we give them a round of applause?
There you go. That's really all I have. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to say on that, or anytime? Mr. Durant?
I would like to note that Casey Jones has passed his Class 3 wastewater operator certification. You now have 3 licensed operators at your wastewater treatment plant. Great job by Casey. Also, Ms. Owens has passed all 11 tests and 1 year of hard study and labor to pass her Certified Municipal Finance Officer certification. She will be awarded a certificate next month, and next month at your Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, you will need to appoint her as your designated CMFO. So we'll congratulate her more next month, but those 2 employees have put forth tremendous effort to get their certification.
We have really stepped up our wastewater plant, have we not, Mr.
Yes,
Perkins? And we've yes, I know. There you go. So no, we appreciate all the hard work and staff doing, continuing education and helping make us all better. So thank you. I don't have anything else, so I guess we need to read the treasurer's report.
All right, December's treasurer's report, the general fund, the beginning balance was $1,159,967.34. The ending balance was $1,084,260.67. And in our sewer fund, the beginning balance was $1,706,876.90. The ending balance was $1,820,250.44.
Does anyone have any questions on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. Any old business, Mrs. Owens?
No, sir.
Okay, on to new business. Item A, first reading of ordinance 2017-12 to amend the Town of Arlington, Tennessee budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. Mrs. Owens.
Yes, sir. So this is going to be your first set of budget amendments for 2017-2018 fiscal year. And I do want to note that there was one error that was originally given to you all, and you should have a work paper in front of you. The original that was sent in your budget said that we would be going into $199,000 into reserves, and that was incorrect. It should only be $1,800 different, so I just want to note that. These are standard budget amendments for things that have already been approved this year, such as the dump truck and just general cleanup line items. So staff recommends approval.
You've heard the recommendation by Ms. Owens. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Harmon, second by Mr. Brooks. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item passes. Item B, Resolution 2017-67 to authorize purchase of a maintenance software through the National Joint Powers Alliance from Dude Solutions to be utilized for town employees. Mr. Perkins. The Dude Solutions looks a little funny. I remember reading
Yeah,
that.
and I have to tell you, I'm really not crazy about the name, but we had to look past that. We spent a lot of time doing a lot of research to come to this resolution. We're asking to purchase this software, which is a cloud-based software, to help manage assets, improve workflow, and make data-driven decisions. The software has two components. It has a non-GIS component and a GIS component. The non-GIS component is used to manage both our under-roof assets, such as facilities, the treatment plant, equipment within the facilities and the treatment plant, as well as our fleet. The GIS portion will let us do in-field work and handle things like streets, signs, stormwater, sewer lines, manholes, and parks and park assets, those types of things. So, as I said, we put in a lot of time looking at a lot of different software, and we felt like this was the best solution for us. And I'd like to commend somebody I didn't mention in that letter in your packet, who was instrumental. That was Kevin Carter. He provided some valuable input as far as parks and how it can be utilized there. And I want to give a shout out to our one of our PW Public Works clerks, Dana Salabor, who did an amazing job with all the meetings and phone calls, webinars, conference calls, emails, you name it. She did a lot of research, asked a lot of questions, and got a lot of answers. But currently we're using pen and paper, dry erase boards, spreadsheets, those types of things, and this will allow us to do much better, work more efficiently, keep better records, historical data that we can recall and utilize to to project capital needs, manpower needs, those types of things.
You've heard the recommendation by Mr. Perkins. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Brooks, second by Mr. Biggs. Discussion or questions on this?
I got a few questions. The software, is it good for generating like plant maintenance items,
Yes,
annual reminders?
Yes, you can
Keep
do
log on.
preventative maintenance work tasks so that it'll
Generate
notify
every
you. Yes, it'll generate preventative maintenance. You can actually enter in work orders and push it to smart devices in the field, to department heads or crew leaders, whoever you deem that needs to go to. They can actually see it real time from where they are. They can go from one task to another without having to report back, find out what the next issue is. Better response times, those types of things. They can close tickets out in the field, so do just about anything you need to do.
And you can report from the field what was done?
Yes, they can enter in the information right there, and they can close the ticket out, send the information back. They get notified when they do have a work order that they need to give attention to.
Sweet. Good deal.
That's your question, sir? Anyone else have anything? I think it's great. Anytime we can try to improve technology and streamline stuff, it helps out. And especially with the record keeping, because I know that's...
Yeah, it can give you, we can print out reports and get information that we can compile and put, in a snapshot that we can look at to do comparisons, or, to look at large pieces of information in graph form or charts, so that you can see the information that you need to right there, rather than trying to go through and look at individual address files, if it has something to do with, a complaint at an address, or, a street or that sort of thing. You may look at a neighborhood and be able to see through the GIS portion, look at all of the work orders where maybe you've had pothole issues in a street, and you can kind of get a snapshot and see the big picture.
Okay. Great. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Just, even though we have item C next, just, everybody's aware that item C and D are directly related, so I know sometimes it gets a little confusing, but item C has to happen before item D can happen, so, but they are essentially the same thing in the long term, so. So item C, Resolution 2017-68, an initial resolution authorizing the town of Arlington to borrow funds and incur indebtedness in the principal amount of not to exceed $6 million by obtaining a loan from the Public Works Building Authority of the City of Clarksville, Tennessee for certain public works projects and to fund the incidental and necessary expense related thereto. Who am I turning? I've got three names here to turn it over to.
Myself.
Turn it over to Ms. Durant first. Okay, I've got all three of you down there.
Good evening. Just a brief history on the property, if I may. Well, if I may. Like the mayor said, there are two resolutions here, 2017-68, 2017-69. One is the initial resolution, one is a resolution to authorize. There is two-step process here. In 2005, the town of Arlington purchased the 25 acres on Forest Street for $600,000 or $24,000 an acre. In 2012, the town of Arlington began the process to create a master development plan. I believe Mr. Wilson spoke to that eloquently a few minutes ago, and this proposal is in keeping with the Depot Square Master Development Plan. After multiple hearings, the plan was adopted in January of 2013. Those public hearings were held by different interest groups, the Arlington Association for the Preservation of Tennessee Antiquities, the Merchants Association. There were numerous interest groups that were consulted on that master development plan. The 25 acres were identified as a critical part of the success to Depot Square, and the town has operated in that direction ever since. In 2014, we were awarded a Local Parks and Recreation Fund grant for a Phase 1 of Forest Street Park. Phase 1 created the fields for soccer play. We are about ready to start on Phase 2. When we accepted grant money on this 15 acres, that deed restricted that as a park in perpetuity. So the 15 acres is being developed currently with grant money that is 50-50 matching grant money. We hope to have the engineering plans ready and go out for bid in January. Maybe out for construction in February, March, depending on the weather for phases 2 and 3. Phases 2 and 3 consist of a concession stand with a pavilion, playground, walking trails, irrigation, and lighting to finish off this facility. But you will note that the parking that is to the east is existing and it is insufficient. So our concern is when you have a lot of tournament play down there or you have soccer games back to back to back to back, that's a small parking lot for a lot of cars coming and going. So it is crucial that we get some additional parking, which the additional 10 acres to the west is going to allow us to do. Last month, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved standards for municipal facilities and a Forest Street Campus Master Development Plan for the balance of the 10-acre site that is consistent with the Depot Square Master Development Plan. That's giving you an overview of the entire site and how that will propose to lay out. The loan would enable staff to work closely with the architectural and engineering firm to get more detailed construction documents, which will help us give a better cost projection than just on the master development plan. That is a grading and drainage plan. It's an aerial photo. It's going to show you everything in red is where the drainage is currently going, and there are structures. Everything in the green line is the basin that's draining in that direction. Everything is the improvements overlaid on the site. Mr. Hill is here to answer any engineering questions you may have about grading and drainage. Mr. David Baker is here to answer any questions that you have about the master development plan moving forward. And we're all here, staff's here to answer any questions you have.
You've heard the recommendation by Mrs. Durant. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Ms. Pardue,
Second.
second by Mr. McKee. Now to discussion. Who wants to open the floor first? I know there's some comments and questions for this. Mr. Harmon.
I'm not scared. Well, I think, like we've had several people speak before us, Depot Square is actually kind of where old Arlington begins. It's the heart. We have development coming in, people investing, and we've been working on the Depot Square plan since 2012. Now is the time that we go ahead and do our part. Let's go ahead, make it a meeting place. This is where, if you go to the Music on the Squares, this is where, we could have a couple of thousand people. This is where you come down and meet your neighbor. Something this nice that we're looking at going ahead and doing, yeah, it's really gonna be worth it.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Before we get into the next question, I do want to have Mr. Hill come up maybe, because maybe try to head off some of this, please. Because we hear the $6 million price tag, and that gets everybody on edge, understandably. And I'm going to ask Mr. Durant to explain what the realistic scope of that $6 million may be also. But how much of this is grading and drainage on 10 acres is kind of where I mean, the challenges we're facing. Mr. Hill?
I think our preliminary numbers on grading and drainage costs are somewhere in the $600,000 to $700,000 range. The site is, everything drains toward the railroad under you see the little red box on the drawing, that's where there's a pointer on here, I assume, right? That's where all the water leaves the site. And there's probably 3 or 4 feet of fall across that site. To get that all to drain properly and not have any drainage problems going forward, we need to do some fill, particularly where buildings are going to be and obviously where the amphitheater is going to be. We're talking about excavating a small water feature over on the northwest corner, but we've determined that won't be enough dirt for the fill that we need for all the facilities we're looking at. So there will be a cost of bringing in soil to fill the site and to get the grading and drainage to work properly. So that's probably a lot of the cost is the fill and then the drain system associated with it.
So we're looking at, I mean, just off the rough estimates of this, we're looking at 10 to 15% of just grading and drainage is what you just said, correct? Okay.
It seems that way at this point. And obviously, as Mr. Durant mentioned, we will be refining and getting into a lot more detail. When you're trying to do an estimate, when you don't have any detailed plans to do that from, we're obviously going to try to be conservative. I hate to be the low bidder, tell you something's going to cost $1 million and it costs $1.5 million, you won't be happy with me. So I can tell you that I've tried to make the numbers as realistic as I can, and at first glance it may seem a little high. I think Mr. Durant told me that when I sent her some numbers. So, but we will have the opportunity to hone those in and get more precise on that.
And Ms. Durant, I know some individuals have probably had discussions with you, but just for the whole board's sake, what kind of scope are we looking at? I mean, I know there's a lot of different features proposed on the master plan for this, but
At the very least, I would hope that we could achieve the grading, the drainage, the landscaping, the lighting, the parking, the walking trail, everything to make it look like a finished product. You may have those out parcels remain vacant for a while until we get further into it. The amphitheater is going to be the key thing that I think we're going to need to do first. And the reason I say that is because Mr. Wilson spoke about development happening in Depot Square. Mr. Moultrie spoke about development happening in Depot Square. That's wonderful, that's great, but we enjoyed vacant lots down there for so long, and we utilized those vacant lots for town events for so long that we've gotten in a habit of thinking there's plenty of room down there to do the things that we need. Nobody knew Saturday that you were going to have such a crowd on Airline Road. And then a lot of people were shaking their head today going, okay, I get it. I get why it's not on Chester Street anymore. There's a lot more people in Arlington than there used to be, which is why we're doing a special census. And I believe you're going to see that happen in Depot Square, and you're going to need some place to have those music on the squares, those places to come out and meet your neighbor, those Arlington and April events, places that are safe. and attractive and bring people together. And I think you're going to see even the new theater group in Arlington want to utilize that stage. One of the great things about it being down there with the community garden and hopefully someday the library is that you're bringing a lot of elements that work well together and could share the space together and utilize it multi-purpose. There's also a building down there that we hope to place for a farmer's market. Had one for a while with S.Y. Wilson's. It closed. They needed to utilize the space differently. Mr. Carter would work with local growers. Maybe we reach out to some of the growers at the Ag Center and see if we can't reestablish a farmer's market in Arlington on one of those sites. I've been passionate about the library for years. Any of you that's known me for any length of time knows that I believe in the library. I believe it's a social center. I believe it's a learning center. I believe it's a job center. There are a lot of great things that we do at the library, and if you're not aware of those things, I encourage you to go down and talk to staff or look at the stats that I sent you. So one day we will need to do something with the library, but we've got to get into the layers of this and look at what we can do with the amount of money we can afford. And to me, $6 million right now without raising taxes is what you can afford.
That's the big key. Mr. Biggs?
Yes, I have quite a bit to say, so I apologize if I get long-winded. It's a beautiful park. I think someday, that vision is going to come to fruition. As far as the borrowing the $6 million as a line of credit, the only reason that, for me personally, that I can approve that is because as we borrow from it, we get to vote on those projects. We're not borrowing $6 million. But I do have some concerns with the parking. That's a need. I understand that. It's a safety issue that has to be addressed. The same thing with the grant money, the 50 grant money, phase 2 and phase 3, that needs to be done so we don't lose that money. But for me, when we start talking about the amphitheater and we start talking about the library and the walking trails and things of that nature that I think I would characterize as wants, not needs. I don't have, I want those things just like everybody else does, but I have a huge concern from the standpoint that there's this financial uncertainty that I think our town has that we've not addressed, and we don't know what the cost of that's going to be. We just hired a new chief. The chief is doing his due diligence. Everybody that I've spoken to on both sides of the fire issue has said, how much integrity Chief Harwell has, and he's going to do what's right for Arlington. But until we get his recommendations, I don't know what the cost of implementing those recommendations are going to be. And so when we start talking about borrowing money that we're going to have to make an annual or a monthly payment on, and we don't know what the cost of whatever recommendations Chief Harwell's going to have, I think it'd be prudent to be patient and to at least have that information first so that we have the whole financial picture and we're not making these decisions just on part of the financial picture. So I want the staff to know, I want the board to know, I don't want to surprise anybody in 3 or 4 months when it comes before us and, hey, I'm just throwing out numbers, just an example, but we want to borrow $2 million for an amphitheater. Don't be surprised, because until we get those answers for the fire department, that's just an unknown for me that I just can't get past.
Is that all you have for now?
Yes.
Okay. Who else? No? Oh, Mr. Harmon.
Well, I understand your concern. Being an old fire chief for 39 years, I kind of get a little view of both sides. I too am concerned about the fire, but this is something that we've got to have both. It's not a question, can we have this or this one? One is infrastructure, the other is fire safety. So what we're going to have to do is figure out how are we going to do both. It's not a question, well, we're going to put off this project or the fire. I understand it. I've been pushing for fire myself for several years, but I understand we got to figure out how to pay for it too. So right now with us, looking at having a line of credit of $6 million, we will be looking at each project, we'll be making sure that we're getting the best amount built for it. We're not just going to approve some big high-dollar building just to say because we got the extra money. I intend myself to look at each project, do it correctly, but save as much money as possible, and look how to do the fire myself, So it's not a matter of how, but we got to have both.
Well, I mean, it is a matter of how, though.
But it is, yes.
We got to figure out how we're going to pay for it. That's just my concern. I don't have any personal debt. I haven't had personal debt in 10 years.
Yeah.
House, cars. My mother, when best present I ever got, she bought me financial peace when I graduated college. I live by those principles. They've served me very well. I don't think they're bad principles for a town either. It's not that I don't want these. It's not that I won't approve taking out a debt to pay for some of it. The question I have is, I just don't want to answer that question until I have my answers to the first question. There may not be any cost increase from the fire. I don't know, but I don't know because I don't have the recommendations yet. I want the recommendations before we start pouring money into what I consider on the park to be some of the wants. Like I said, the parking has to be done. It's a safety issue. The grant money too. I understand we don't want to lose the money that we have from the grant, so that's not an issue for me. But as we start moving forward, hopefully we can get the answers to the fire situation, maybe before we start voting on some of these things, so that we do have a complete financial picture of what we're looking at. I try to read the Bible every day. I don't read it every day, but I almost read it every day. In the last 2 weeks, as I've been thinking about this project, a Bible verse kind of stood out to me, and I'll share it with you guys because I think it's relevant to this, in my opinion. Luke chapter 14, verse 28, "For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" I don't think that we can say that we have counted the cost when we don't have the fire question answered. That's my personal opinion. I know I'm probably in the minority and it's not going to matter, but, like I said, that's a great vision. I want to see it. I know that we are going to see it at some time, but I think we need to answer the fire question first.
Thank you, Mr. Victor. Mr. McKee.
Appreciate what you're saying, Jeremy, I really do. First off, as we all know, nothing works fast in government, right? And so I have a feeling that your concerns will be, if there are any that need to be addressed from that side, will be long before we get to the process of truly taking a large amount of debt out of this. Nothing on this is going to move in 3 months, other than, I'm sure, working with consultants, et cetera, to start the process. I mean, when did we file for grant paperwork for the first and second phases of that project?
The first phase was 2014.
That was when it was approved. It was filed for in 2012, wasn't it, Kevin? 2013.
Okay.
And then your second and third phase was applied for last year. We were just awarded this year.
We got lucky and got both those together, right? Yeah.
So, and I say that I think you can feel comfortable that this is not going to be speeding by at 90 miles an hour with no control, and that other things that we all know that are going to be answered for us on the next few months. I don't think we're going to not know one without the other, but based on where interest rates are going,
Oh, I understand.
I think that we are being financially frugal-minded with that. We've already seen a 1-point rate increase in the last 5 months, and expecting to see those again, if not more, over the next 6 to 12 months. And so I'm in favor of moving forward with this. as Mr. Wilson talked about, he's got, expecting to spend around $7 million on his one project. The Winsteads and Moultrie project is another $2.5 million, if I remember correctly. You've got the project on Greenlee that should be coming up in the next several months, which is probably $1.5 million, maybe higher project. You've got a restaurant that's going to be rebuilding in Brenda Lay, which is a couple $1 million. I believe this is a smart investment. We talk about how are we going to pay for something. That investment in our town, as well as this, begin to get people to come and to congregate. And what do you do when you congregate? You spend money. I mean, and those things do reflect in each other, I believe, in these types of projects. That is it going to pay for itself wholly in 12 months? Never would happen. But it is something that's an investment in our town that I believe is prudent and smart. We've been working smart over 10, 12 years on this whole process. The library takes in a foot of water anytime it rains hard. I mean, we're seeing some things that we're going to need to address, not only from the amphitheater and safety standpoint. That the good thing about having success at Music on the Square and other events is you get a lot of people there. The negative is you get a lot of people there, and it becomes a safety issue, and we're seeing that down there. And you know, I spoke to our attorney about it, and he told me, he said he doesn't even go to the Music on the Square anymore because he gets nervous with people walking around the railroad tracks. And, you know, I mean, we got to look at how do we provide these things and continue moving our town forward and keeping the safety of our citizens involved in it as well. So I'm in favor of the project. I have faith in our staff. I have faith in our board that we're going to do the best we can to make sure that we keep the town from being in a bad position financially. I've watched that over 6 years, and this board's done a pretty good job with that. Previous members, and I believe the current members will continue to do that. But I'm excited about this. I think like I said, we've got $10 to $15 million worth of projects getting ready to move on this in the next 18 months. I don't think there's a better time to look at this project for the impact to get the most out of it as possible for our town.
The scope of public works facilities listed on the bond also includes town hall and a couple other things. The way the bond issue works is if you don't include it in the scope, you can't spend the money on it. So you include everything that you think you may spend the money on. So this board had.
Spend it all.
That's right. It's a 3-year drawdown. This board talked a little bit about, is the library built on this site, or can we retrofit this building and build town hall next door? So when we were coming up with the list of public works projects that might be spent or accomplished with this bond money, we said we'll include everything, and then that way getting into this project and maybe even having the discussion back on town hall, it's all included in there so that you can take a look at those individually. You do have 3 years drawdown, 20-year fixed rate, 10-year re-rate.
Mr. Brooks.
I guess what makes a lot of sense to me is, I've been sitting up here the longest of anybody. I've been up here 14 years, and I don't even want to guess where our reserves were 14 years ago, but we've done a tremendous job building those reserves up, and those reserves are what allow us to finish and complete projects and borrow money at that kind of interest rate. There's a lot of cities around this county alone that would love to be able to borrow money at the interest rate we're allowed to borrow money at. In saying and doing that, we can also leave those funds in our reserve accounts, which will allow us to complete things like the fire department. When the needs do arise, those funds are on hand and ready to go. We're not scrounging around looking for money to complete things. So for me, those are the things that make the most sense. If we're going to try and complete some projects around town that truly need to be completed for safety issues, that have been on the table for years, that have been kind of nickel and dime to death, it just makes a lot of sense. Now, I was part of the baseball when the sports complex was built in a bean field. It was a bean field and a horse riding arena at one time. So it was kind of thrown together, and there wasn't a whole lot of money put into it, and it wasn't done right to begin with. But since Kevin's been in office, or on the public works and in the Parks and Rec, things have turned around. That sports complex is dynamite. We pieced it together over the years. We probably spent more money by doing it that way than we would have had if we'd have done the project right up front and completed it, and it would have saved us money in the long run. So I think it's a great idea. I'm ready to move forward with the project. I'd love seeing the idea of the park incorporating some sports and some family-oriented stuff. I think that's great. I think it'll work out and everybody's going to enjoy it. Now, whether we go with spending the entire $6 million over 3 years, maybe, maybe not, but it's there for us like a credit card. So utilize it smart, do our due diligence, as Jeremy's referring to, do things smart, make sure we got all our ducks in a row, save our reserves, so we can do those things like expand the fire department. So that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with Mr. Harmon, Mr. Biggs, everything that's been said. You know, because we don't ever know what's coming at us. We have $240,000 of non-sewer debt, and that's basically 3 payments, the next 3 payments on the fire truck, and it's paid for. So that's $80,000 a year. So we are, besides non-sewer debt, we are about as debt-free as anybody can be. So taking on an additional roughly $400-something a year in debt, up to if we took out the full amount, it has some cause for concern, but again, some years, not in the last year or two, but some years, our reserve fund, because we do great budgeting through the finance committee and through staff, to where, some years that we may have a couple $100,000 left over, and there's been a couple years where we've had $1 million left over, depending on how projects worked out. So that's why our reserves are the way they are. So that's the philosophy that this town's had for quite some time. That's the philosophy that staff's had. So we've been able to progress like that, and that's what's good. I will say the one difference with this one, I think, is this is not a grant. So it doesn't necessarily have to move as slow as the grant process, correct?
Correct.
Because that's the problem with it. We heard just, I think, at last month's meeting, the walking or the bike trail down to
5 years, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years for a $600,000 project on a bike trail, but yet, we could do this, depending on once we get through all the architectural and engineering, at our pace. So that's a good thing. But again, this is, to Mr. Biggs' concern, I understand, I'm a fire proponent also, and I know that we need those numbers. But again, this is up to $6 million with no tax increase. And so we don't even have to worry about crossing that bridge. We have, and Angela, Mrs. Reeder could, I don't know if she has that number off her head, but just look around town right now, how many buildings are going up. It's not sitting here telling, hey, we've got this, and this going, because we do have a lot coming. We got more residential and more commercial, but you can just drive down right now, and there's construction all down. And the people I've met with in the last couple of weeks have all said that, we can see when we come into town what's going on in Arlington. So we're excited about that. And this gets to, I guess, the end is Depot Square. We've all said it, and I think we all agree that Depot Square is the heart and soul of our town. And as much as we have to focus on every other part of town, that is one area that we cannot neglect. That is one area that we cannot ever let it slip like some other communities have, and you won't be able to get it back. So parking is, I think, an absolute no questions asked on this, because that's one of the biggest complaints we get on Mr. Carter, don't we, on the busy soccer weekends, which it's a good problem to have, like Mr. McKee said, but it's also a bad problem to have. So parking, and of course when we and my philosophy is, and I think we've seen it, is we've kind of piecemealed stuff together over the last few years because of grant money, to where we may put in a field and then have to go back and dig up that field to put the lights or the landscaping in the next year. Then we have to go back the next year and then we're kind of doing double and triple work. And this would be one of those to where there's no grant money. We can do it on our pace, and we can do it right from the get-go. And that's what I hope that we can do. So any other questions or comments from this board towards staff? Mr. Biggs?
I want to make sure I'm clear, and I don't want to, confuse people. It's not that I don't like the park. I love the park. I was on the Parks and Rec Committee for 6 years. I love the park. I love everything about it. And I don't even mind taking on debt for part of the park. My concern is just this, there's just this in the back of my mind. I keep thinking about what is this other unknown going to cost? And because I've heard some wide variety of numbers, everything from nothing to a whole lot. So when we say what we can add $400,000 to our budget without raising taxes, that's true. But we don't know what's coming down from, what recommendations Chief Harville's gonna have. So at that point, is everybody willing to raise taxes? And then, to me, if I'm in the community, I don't think people are gonna separate the two. I don't think people are gonna say, oh, well, we can raise taxes for fire protection because that's a safety issue. But they're gonna look at it like this was part of the reason that we're having to raise taxes.
And I don't think anybody, I don't want to speak for everybody up here. I don't think anybody thinks you're not for it. And I think everybody understands your concern. I'm for it too, but I'm also one, you live within your means. But your means change, and then you find ways to still live within your means sometimes. I mean, half this board knows it. Your kids have to have braces, or they go to college, or they need a new car or something, and you're still making the same amount of money, and you got to find a way to move it around. So it may be different when you're talking millions versus thousands, but when you start talking our budgets versus a town budget, it's kind of the same philosophy. So you may have to, and then we get into that discussion is where, can we still live within our means, or do we have to make some adjustments, whether it's cutting somewhere or adding to the tax base. And right now, I don't think anybody has any intention of doing that until we have those numbers. But once we do, then we have to sit down and get in the nuts and bolts and do it. But if it's justified, in my opinion, I never want to, everybody can sit up here and say they don't want to raise taxes, but if it's justified, I'm more than willing to do whatever's needed to get whatever we got to get done. So, anybody else have anything? Are you comfortable with moving forward with this?
Good.
Okay. All right, so this is item C. Of course, we're going to go into item D, which is just cleaning up this in just a second. So, all in favor of item C, Resolution 2017-68, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item passes. All right, now we're on item D, which is Resolution 2017-69, a resolution authorizing a loan pursuant to a loan agreement between the Town of Arlington, Tennessee, and the Public Building Authority of the City of Clarksville, Tennessee, and the principal amount not to exceed $6 million, authorizing the execution and delivery of such loan agreement and other documents relating to said loan, approving insurance of said bond by such public building authority, providing the application of the proceeds of said loan and the payment of such indebtedness, consenting the assignment of the town's obligation under such loan agreement, and certain other matters. Since that was a lot said, Mrs. Durant, do you want this, or Mr. Lawson on this one?
Mr. Lawson?
Speaking to the microphone, Mr. Lawson, you were on camera.
I've got you now. Yeah, with this is the resolution that actually goes through the agreement. You were provided agreements, about 25, 30 pages to the TML bond fund. Like I say, this is a 20-year amortized loan, 10-year rate fix, 3.02 for the first 10 years. Goes through, it's, like was said, essentially a line of credit. You can borrow none of it. You can borrow up to $6 million. We have a 3-year drawdown on it. This locks the rate in. Interest rates have gone up significantly in the last 5 months. We'll do so again. And if we don't approve this now, we'll likely go up after the first of the year. So this locks a rate in for any of this. Whatever you approve will be all right, knowing what we can spend right now on this. So the agreements with TML, this is how we borrowed money from the pool in the past on other matters instead of going to the bond market. So if you have any other questions, I can address that.
You've heard the recommendation from Mr. Lawson. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Brooks.
Second.
Second by Mr. Biggs. Just one thing I think we mentioned in the last one, I know it's kind of the same discussion, is I don't know if it was clear when we talked about some of the amenities down there, the necessities as far as the parking, but this would also provide, for those of y'all who don't know, down the west side, it's a separate project. We're trying to do some road improvements, but it would have some connectivity to the park to be able to park in the square, walk over, walking trail, and maybe alleviate some crowdiness on some of our events at the square with that also. So,
This walking
yes.
trail goes completely through the site and connects to all the neighborhoods out east, and all those neighborhoods are under construction. So there's a method to the madness here. You are trying to make a walkable community out east to get those pedestrians, the long stretch of walk, and into Depot Square.
Which will sometime in the far future tie into the Loosahatchee Greenway and
Correct.
everything else in town.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we did address that it was going to have some connectivity there too. So, Any comments or questions for staff on just the official resolution now? Before it was just authorizing, now we're actually voting on the resolution. Again, we'll come back before the board in increments of need or scope.
Decision-making on scope.
So, any other questions or comments for staff? Yeah, it was easy. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes. Any other new business, Mrs. Owens?
No, sir.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the bills for payment?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Pardue, second by Mr. Brooks. Anyone object to paying the bills? Seeing none, that item passes. Any other announcements before we adjourn, Mrs. Durant, Ms. Owens?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Harmon, second by Mr. Biggs. Any objection? Thank you. We are adjourned.